From the shores of North Africa to the rivers of Eastern Europe, one empire engineered a world where faiths coexisted, languages mingled, and ideas traveled as swiftly as caravans on the Silk Road. Its rulers were not content to simply wage wars. They rewrote how millions of people ate, traded, governed, and even understood the boundaries of their communities. Yet when the story of the modern world is told, their name often slips into the margins. Still, their legacy lingers in your local laws, your favorite dishes, and even in the daily rituals you don't think twice about. This is the Ottoman Empire, not as a relic of distant sultans and minarets, but as a living force whose influence still shapes our cities, our laws, our food, and even the borders that spark conflict today. Their legacy is in the streets we walk, the markets we shop in, and the habits so familiar we rarely ask where they began. And there is one habit in particular, a small, everyday ritual shared by billions across the globe. So ordinary that most people would never think to trace it back to a centuries-old court in Istanbul. Without the Ottomans, it might never have reached your hands at all. It's the kind of legacy you experience without realizing, invisible, habitual, and centuries in the making. Welcome to Armchair Archaeology, where the past is never just the past. It is part of the world you live in right now. Before us start the journey into the origins of this empire, take a moment to subscribe. Here we unravel the past not as a collection of dates, but as the living roots of our present, one discovery at a time.
The Ottoman Empire began in the early 14th century as a small frontier principality on the edge of a fractured Anatolia. Osman I, whose name would define the empire, commanded a modest band of warriors in a region where the Byzantine Empire was fading and rival Turkish beyliks, small principalities, fought for survival. In this unstable world, many rulers relied on short raids and scorched earth tactics, seizing wealth but leaving little to govern. The Ottomans chose a different path. They absorbed rather than destroyed, offering conquered communities the right to keep their faith, language, and customs in exchange for loyalty and taxes. Greek Christians kept their churches, Armenians continued their schools, and Jewish merchants maintained far-reaching trade networks that stretched into Europe and the Middle East. This was not charity. It was a deliberate strategy to secure loyalty, stabilize new territories, and strengthen the economy. A population allowed to maintain its traditions was less likely to rebel and more likely to contribute to the empire's prosperity. The results came quickly. In less than 150 years, the Ottomans ruled from the Balkans to the Black Sea, a pace of expansion that rivaled Rome's early rise, yet accomplished without erasing the identities of those they governed. Their strategy wasn't just about conquest. It was about crafting stability across differences, a principle that echoes in how many nations today manage diverse populations. The approach created a model for ruling diverse populations. In parts of the Balkans today, Orthodox churches and Ottoman-era mosques still stand within sight of each other. Minority protections in certain regions, the survival of multiple languages in Anatolia, and even aspects of local governance trace back to the framework first built in these formative decades. From a small frontier state, the Ottomans laid the foundations for a cosmopolitan empire, one soon powerful enough to take on one of the most fortified cities in the world and win. The past often hides in plain sight, in the food we eat, the laws we follow, even in the smallest daily rituals. If you like reminders of history woven into the everyday, take a peek at our Ancient Secrets mug, designed for curious minds like yours. Links in the pinned comment.
In 1453, the Ottomans set their sights on Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. For over 1,000 years, the city's massive triple walls had repelled every siege. Positioned at the meeting point of Europe and Asia, it was the key to controlling trade between the Mediterranean and the Silk Road. Whoever held it would command the crossroads of the known world. Sultan Mehmed II, just 21 years old, led an army of around 80,000. Among them were engineers who would cast enormous bronze cannons capable of smashing stone walls that had withstood centuries of attacks. After 53 days of siege, the Ottomans broke through. Constantinople became Istanbul, the new capital of the empire. The change was not just political. Mehmed preserved and adapted much of the city's Byzantine heritage. Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque but retained its Christian mosaics. Markets filled with goods from Cairo, Venice, and beyond. Languages from Greek to Persian echoed in its streets. The city became a living mosaic of cultures, faiths, and traditions. The conquest didn't just reshape a city, it triggered a global domino effect still unfolding today. European powers, now cut off from overland trade with Asia, began searching for sea routes, voyages that would eventually lead to the Age of Discovery. Within the city, the Ottoman blend of architectural styles, street markets, and multicultural neighborhoods created an urban model still visible today. Modern Istanbul's skyline, food culture, and even its role as a global transit hub all trace back to Mehmed's vision. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, but it also marked the birth of a capital that would become one of the world's great cities, a bridge between continents and centuries.
Power in the Ottoman Empire was measured not only in armies and wealth, but in stone, marble, and brick. Few embodied this more than Mimar Sinan, the chief imperial architect of the 16th century. Born to a Christian family in Anatolia and recruited into the Janissaries, Sinan's skill in engineering and design earned him the trust of 3 sultans. His buildings were more than places of worship. A grand mosque complex, or kuliye, could include schools, hospitals, baths, soup kitchens, and markets. These were designed to serve entire neighborhoods, blending civic function with spiritual life. The Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, one of Sinan's masterpieces, was constructed so precisely that its central dome distributes weight evenly without metal reinforcements, an achievement still admired by modern architects. You can find echoes of Sinan's influence in the way modern campuses, cultural centers, and city complexes are designed to blend beauty and utility. Sinan's style fused Byzantine structural solutions, Persian decorative traditions, and Islamic spatial harmony, yet created something distinctly Ottoman. Domes seemed to float, courtyards flowed naturally into prayer halls, and carefully placed windows filled interiors with light. His designs projected the image of an empire that was both sophisticated and enduring. Many of these complexes are still in use today, with their original functions largely intact. Istanbul residents still pray in Sinan's mosques, send children to schools he built, and walk through markets that have operated for centuries. The concept of public buildings as community anchors, a single complex providing multiple services, is now a standard in modern urban planning, from cultural centers to university campuses. Through architecture, Sinan crafted more than skylines. He gave the empire a physical identity that absorbed many cultures, yet felt whole. In doing so, he helped ensure that the Ottoman presence would be seen, felt, and lived in long after its armies stopped marching. Sinan's architectural genius didn't just shape skylines, it shaped how empires presented themselves to the world. And if you're curious about the hidden technologies, ancient blueprints, and design marvels that still baffle modern engineers, there's more waiting in Secrets of the Ancient World: Mysteries, Technologies, and Lost Civilizations. Link in the pinned comment.
One of the Ottoman Empire's most distinctive strengths was its ability to govern people of many religions without the kind of relentless conflict that destroyed other states. In the same centuries that much of Europe was torn apart by wars of religion, the Ottomans developed a structure known as the millet system. A millet was, in essence, a self-governing religious community within the empire. Each had its own leaders, courts, schools, and places of worship. Greek Orthodox Christians followed the authority of their patriarch in Constantinople. Armenian Christians answered to their own patriarchate. Jewish communities looked to a chief rabbi for leadership. These leaders handled matters such as tax collection, dispute resolution, and education,
while the Ottoman government provided military protection and overall political stability. This arrangement meant that people could marry, inherit property, and practice their faith according to their own traditions, while still belonging to the wider imperial system. It wasn't utopia. Inequality remained, especially in taxes and status. Muslims held political supremacy, and non-Muslims often paid higher taxes. Yet, compared to the forced conversions and expulsions that occurred in many other empires, the Ottoman model allowed minority cultures to endure for centuries. Its influence remains visible today. In parts of the Balkans and the Middle East, it is still possible to walk from an active mosque to a centuries-old church or synagogue within minutes. In some modern states, religious authorities still oversee aspects of personal law in a way that recalls the millet arrangement. By turning religious diversity into a manageable structure, the Ottomans built a framework that reduced unrest and gave different communities a stake in the empire's survival. This early form of multicultural governance helped hold the empire together for more than 600 years and still shapes social landscapes today. If you're enjoying these deep dives into how the Ottoman Empire managed what others couldn't, like centuries of religious coexistence, consider tapping that Super Thanks button. It's a small way to help us keep exploring big questions.
To many outside the empire, the Ottoman imperial harem was imagined as a secluded paradise of silks, perfumes, and idle beauty. In reality, it was a highly organized political institution at the heart of imperial decision-making. The harem occupied the private quarters of Topkapi Palace, home to the sultan's wives, concubines, children, and female relatives. At its head was the Valide Sultan, the mother of the reigning sultan. She combined maternal authority with political skill, advising her son, managing rival factions, and sponsoring public works that projected imperial power. During the 16th and 17th centuries, in what historians call the Sultanate of Women, figures like Hurrem Sultan, Qasim Sultan, and Turhan Sultan influenced the empire's direction in profound ways. At a time when most empires excluded women from politics entirely, these figures moved pieces on the imperial chessboard. They negotiated with foreign rulers, secured alliances through marriage or patronage, and even acted as regents when heirs to the throne were too young to rule. Decisions made in the harem could affect military campaigns, trade agreements, and the fate of provinces hundreds of miles away. Their influence also transformed cityscapes. These women funded mosques, schools, hospitals, soup kitchens, and public fountains across the empire. The Haseki Hurrem Sultan Mosque in Istanbul still serves worshippers. A fountain built under Qasim Sultan's patronage continues to provide water in the city's historic quarters. In Damascus and Sarajevo, public buildings trace their origins to imperial women's charitable endowments. This legacy has clear modern echoes. Today, philanthropists, cultural leaders, and private citizens without formal political roles can still shape policy, guide public opinion, and fund projects that alter a city's life. The Ottoman harem was far from a passive retreat. It was an arena of strategy and influence, where women shaped politics, culture, and infrastructure, leaving marks still visible in stone and tradition.
At its height, the Ottoman Empire commanded the main arteries of global commerce. Caravans from Persia and India crossed Anatolia with silk, spices, and gemstones. Ships from Alexandria and Cairo brought sugar, coffee, and fine cotton into the Mediterranean. From Venice and Genoa came glassware, wool cloth, and precious metals. The Ottomans did not merely tax these goods, they regulated, protected, and directed their movement, turning their empire into the exchange hub of 3 continents. Istanbul's Grand Bazaar became the commercial heart of this system. The scent of cinnamon and saffron mixed with leather and freshly woven fabrics. Merchants sold Chinese porcelain beside Persian carpets and Venetian glassware. Specialized streets and guilds ensured that a buyer could find the best copperware on one lane and the finest perfumes on another. The scale of this trade was extraordinary. Silver mined in the Americas, shipped to Spain and carried across Europe, often ended up in Ottoman markets. There it was exchanged for goods Europeans could not obtain directly, such as Indian spices or Chinese silks. This flow of wealth connected the Ottoman economy to events unfolding as far away as the Andes or the Philippines. Commerce shaped more than wealth. It influenced diets, languages, and even architecture. Words for coffee, sugar, sherbet, and cotton entered multiple languages through Ottoman trade. Recipes blended influences from the Balkans, Arabia, and Persia, creating dishes like baklava and pilaf that remain popular today. In many ways, the Ottomans built an early form of the modern global supply chain. They managed tariffs, maintained trade routes, and invested in infrastructure to keep goods moving. The principles of connecting markets, standardizing quality, and securing trade corridors still underpin international commerce in the 21st century.
For more than 4 centuries, the Janissaries were the elite soldiers of the Ottoman Empire. They were feared and admired across Europe, known for their discipline, skill, and unwavering loyalty to the Sultan. Their origins were unusual. Through the Devshirme system, Christian boys from the Balkans were taken from their families, converted to Islam, and trained for state service. The most capable became Janissaries, while others became administrators, scribes, or artisans. This system created an army bound directly to the central government rather than to local nobles. It eliminated divided loyalties that often weakened medieval states. The Janissaries were among the first standing armies in Europe to be kept in constant readiness, paid regular salaries, and equipped with firearms at a time when many armies still relied on feudal levies and swords. On the battlefield, their precision was legendary. They advanced in formation to the rhythm of kettle drums, releasing volleys of musket fire that broke enemy lines. European observers wrote with a mix of awe and anxiety about their training and discipline. But the Janissaries' influence went beyond war. Stationed in cities, many engaged in trade or crafts during peacetime. Over time, they became a political force, capable of supporting reforms or resisting them. By the 17th century, they could decide who sat on the throne. The idea of a military corps with significant political influence has not disappeared. In several modern countries, elite units or military institutions still play a role in shaping political decisions, sometimes stabilizing governments and sometimes challenging them. The Janissaries began as a tool to strengthen the empire, but their story shows the double-edged nature of concentrated power. They were both protectors and potential threats to the state they served. From elite soldiers to bustling bazaars, the empire's influence moved through people, politics, and peppercorns. And if you want to trace the ancient trade routes and forgotten civilizations that fed this global web, Secrets of the Ancient World covers it all. Links in the pinned comment. An Ottoman bazaar was more than a market. It was the living pulse of the city. The scent of fresh bread mingled with saffron, cinnamon, and roasting coffee beans. The air was alive with the sounds of bargaining in Turkish, Greek, Armenian, Arabic, and Ladino, each voice adding to the rhythm of trade. Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, one of the largest covered markets in the world, was organized with near military precision. Streets and alleys were grouped by trade. One lane might be filled with copperware workshops, another lined with textile merchants displaying silks from Bursa and velvets from Venice. Perfume sellers kept rosewater, musk, and ambergris in glass bottles that caught the light. Guilds monitored prices and ensured that every product met imperial standards, making the bazaar not only a place of commerce, but also a symbol of quality control. Food vendors offered skewers of grilled lamb, bowls of spiced lentils, and syrup-soaked pastries. A small cup of thick, bitter coffee could be enjoyed at a nearby stall, often alongside conversation about politics or the latest ship to arrive at the port. Recipes traveled with traders. A baker from Damascus might sweeten his pastries with Greek honey, while an Anatolian cook might add North African spices to local stews. Over time, this shared culinary culture created a shared Ottoman food culture, still visible today, in baklava, pilaf, and stuffed vegetables. The bazaar was also a place of information. In a way, it was the original algorithm, a dynamic system of goods, gossip, and cultural exchange, updating in real time. Travelers swapped news from distant provinces, and diplomats quietly gathered intelligence. Many modern markets in cities like Sarajevo, Cairo, and Istanbul preserve this Ottoman model. Even digital marketplaces echo its structure, a single hub where cultures, goods, and ideas meet. In every bargain struck and every shared meal, the bazaar's legacy lives on. From architecture to food, the Ottoman legacy is everywhere, often in places we don't expect. Which part of this history caught you off guard? Tell us in the comments. We're always curious what surprises our viewers most.
The phrase, "the sick man of Europe," has often been used to describe the late Ottoman Empire, creating an image of inevitable collapse. It is a dramatic label, but it hides a more complex truth. Military setbacks and territorial losses did not mean the empire stopped evolving. But decline wasn't a cliff, it was a crossroads. From the late 17th century onward, the Ottomans faced pressure from industrializing European powers. They lost ground in wars and struggled to match new military technology, but they also adapted. The army was restructured, adopting modern firearms and training methods. Naval dockyards were upgraded to build steam-powered ships. Railways linked Istanbul with Salonika, Damascus, and Baghdad, allowing troops and goods to move faster than ever before. Telegraph lines stitched the provinces into a single communications network. The Tanzimat reforms of the 19th century went even further. They aimed to create a fairer taxation system, standardize laws, and grant certain rights to all subjects regardless of religion. Civil service exams replaced hereditary appointments. In major cities, modern police forces patrolled the streets. Public schools expanded, and newspapers provided a new space for debate. Istanbul gained gaslighting, electric trams, and Western-style government buildings alongside its centuries-old mosques and markets. Yet the sick man label persisted in European diplomacy and the press, often to justify interference and the carving up of Ottoman territory. This simplified narrative overshadowed the fact that the empire remained a functioning state, trading internationally, signing treaties, and managing a diverse population of millions. The modern parallel is clear. States do not always follow a neat rise and fall pattern. They can reinvent themselves in ways that leave lasting influence. Ottoman laws, city layouts, and administrative systems remain part of daily life in regions from the Balkans to North Africa, long after the empire disappeared from the map.
The Ottoman Empire vanished from political maps in 1922, but its influence did not disappear. It is embedded in the streets, languages, cuisines, and institutions of dozens of countries. Some traces are obvious, such as Istanbul's skyline of domes and minarets. Others are so ordinary that their Ottoman roots often go unnoticed. In cities across the Balkans, Anatolia, and the Middle East, urban layouts still follow Ottoman principles. A central market forms the heart, with main religious buildings nearby and neighborhoods arranged by trade or community. Many municipal boundaries and property records in these regions are based on Ottoman administrative maps. In several countries, legal codes for land ownership or inheritance still contain clauses first written in the 19th century. Language also carries the legacy.
Ottoman Turkish words entered Arabic, Greek, Bulgarian, Albanian, and Serbian, especially for foods, household items, and trades. Ask for pilav in Istanbul, pilafi in Greece, or plov in Central Asia, and you are tasting a dish that traveled through Ottoman kitchens. Yogurt sauces, stuffed vegetables, and layered pastries are part of a shared food culture that spread under imperial rule. Architecture preserves another layer of heritage. From Sarajevo to Damascus, Ottoman-era mosques, fountains, bridges, and caravanserais still serve their communities. Some remain exactly as they were built. Others have been restored for modern use, such as cultural centers or museums. Even in political thought, traces remain. When today's governments wrestle with balancing unity and diversity, they echo challenges the Ottomans faced centuries ago. The empire's long experience managing diversity influenced ideas of religious tolerance, local autonomy, and centralized authority. These concepts continue to shape debates in countries once under Ottoman rule. The empire is gone, but in the markets, streets, languages, and traditions of a vast region, its presence endures. The modern world still walks through spaces the Ottomans once designed.
From a modest frontier principality to a multi-continental power, the Ottoman Empire shaped the world we live in today. Its architecture still anchors city skylines. Its trade routes reshaped diets and economies. Its legal and administrative systems influenced how modern states organize themselves. The empire's legacy runs quietly through our streets, our food, our languages, and even the way our cities are planned. But one influence is anything but quiet. That small, everyday ritual hinted at in the beginning, the one shared by billions across the globe, is your morning coffee. Coffee drinking as a cultural phenomenon began in the Ottoman world. By the 16th century, Istanbul's coffeehouses were social and political hubs where merchants, poets, scholars, and officials gathered to exchange news and ideas. From there, coffee spread through Ottoman trade networks to Europe, then across oceans, until it became the global habit it is today. The next time you take a sip, you are participating in a tradition that once filled the streets of Ottoman cities with the smell of freshly roasted beans and the sound of conversation. That sip connects you to centuries of trade, conversation, and cultural exchange. The Ottomans are often remembered for conquest and power, but perhaps their most lasting gift was connection, linking peoples, cultures, and continents in ways that still shape our mornings, our meals, and our maps. Until next time, keep questioning, stay curious, and remember, the echoes of empire are never far away. Sometimes they are in the streets you walk, the food you eat, and even in the cup you hold to start your day.